I've been a nurse for a few years now, but nothing prepared me for the weird things I saw at the hospital during my night shifts. Just a few weeks ago, I had to tough it out because I was still reeling from a breakup. I thought I could escape my thoughts, but the night shifts had their own hauntings. On my third night, while restocking supplies, I caught a glimpse down the long hallway. A gurney was moving by itself. I dismissed it, thinking a nurse must have forgotten to lock the brakes. But as it rolled slowly away, I realized there was no one around. My heart raced, but I didn't check. I told myself it was nothing. A few nights later, I was organizing some charts when faint cries floated from the supply closet. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. I stood there, frozen in place, trying to catch what I was hearing. It sounded like someone crying for help. I hesitated, but finally opened the door. The room was empty and dark. Nothing seemed out of place. But I felt uneasy, cold, as if someone was indeed watching me. Then, while going through patient charts, I found one that didn't belong. The name was unfamiliar. A doctor's signature was scribbled below. The handwriting looked shaky, like a child's. I looked around the empty hall and felt chills wash over me. I read the name again, trying to understand it. Fear gnawed at me, but I shook it off. Just stress, I told myself over and over. The shadows around me grew more pronounced on my next shift. I saw them flitting in my peripheral vision. I often thought about asking my coworkers about the chart, but fear held me back. I didn't want to look crazy. One night, I tried to clear my head during a break. The break room was eerily quiet. But just as I began to relax, those cries came back. They echoed louder this time. My heart raced again, and I pushed myself to stand. I turned to leave, but then I heard it. A whisper. My name. Soft and melodic. My breath caught in my throat. You never think it will happen, but I found myself drawn to it. I had to find out what it wanted. As I stepped out into the dim corridor, the air felt heavier. My legs felt like lead. Each step forward sent a wave of dread through me. I walked down the hallway, each flickering light casting eerie shadows. The whispers grew clearer, leading me toward the supply closet. I opened the door, and the temperature dropped. I shivered as I stepped inside. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. The shadows danced around me. I squinted into the dark corners. Then something caught my eye. A figure. I blinked, and it was gone. I felt sick, but couldn't look away. The cries were louder now, pulling me in. Then, suddenly, I saw it. A small child, pale and transparent, stood in the corner, her eyes wide with fear. My heart dropped. "Help me," she whispered, as her gaze fixed on me. I stumbled backward, trying to catch my breath. The child reached out a hand, and I knew then, deep in my bones, I had stepped into something I couldn't explain. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. My heart raced. I was engulfed in darkness, and the child was still there, a ghost trapped in an endless silence. The faint odor of antiseptic filled the air, thickening my senses. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my eyes darting from one shadow to another, expecting something, anything, to leap out at me. "Please," the child said again, her voice trembling like a leaf. "Help me." I swallowed hard. I tried to muster the courage to speak, but my throat felt constricted. The weight of her gaze was unbearable. Staring at her, I felt a connection, a desperate plea from someone who had been lost for far too long. "Where is your mother?" I finally whispered, hoping to anchor her spirit. She shook her head. "I don't know her. I was alone." Her fingers trembled as she hovered between this world and the next. Just as doubts began to fill my head, doubts about my own sanity, about what was happening, the overhead lights flickered again. For a moment, the room was illuminated, showcasing shelves stacked with supplies. Then, darkness reclaimed us. I could hear my own breath, trembling and uneven. The whispers intensified, surrounding me like buzzing bees. I felt the urge to run, to escape this claustrophobic nightmare, but I couldn't abandon the child. "What happened to you?" I asked, as calmly as I could manage. "I want to go home." She sounded so small, so hopeless. And just like that, a thought popped into my mind. What if she wasn't the only one? I shifted my gaze around the cramped supply closet. I felt a strange pull towards a dusty box in the corner. I stepped toward it, almost against my better judgment. "Is this yours?" I asked, pointing a finger. The child's gaze flickered from me to the box. "Yes," she breathed, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. As I reached for the box, the door behind me rattled and I froze. Someone or something was trying to get in. My heart pounded as dread washed over me. I turned to the door, panic rising in my chest. "Stay with me," I shouted, though I didn't know who I was shouting at. Her? The force behind the door? Or maybe my own fear? Suddenly, the door swung open with a screech, revealing an empty hallway behind. I gasped as instinct took over. I bolted from the closet, leaving the pressing darkness behind. I didn't look back, not even to see if the child followed. The hall was eerily silent, but as I raced past the flickering lights, and icy dread consumed me. What if something worse awaited me outside? When I reached the nurse's station, I found no one there. Everything was still. I took a moment to catch my breath, and that's when I noticed it. The chart on the counter, the one with the shaky handwriting. It was still open to the same unfamiliar name. I felt a surge of panic. This wasn't over. There was more to find. Then, from behind me, I heard the whispers again, now laced with urgency. "Help me." I turned, but my voice faltered. The hallway stretched endlessly, darkness swallowing the faded light. I took a deep breath, and somehow my resolve returned. I had to put an end to this, no matter the cost. "What do you want?" I called out to the void, but the answer remained hidden among the shadows. That's when I felt it, a cold draft that sent chills down my spine. And suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. I turned slowly, and my breath caught in my throat. A shadow moved further down the hallway, just out of reach of the weak light. My instincts screamed at me to run, but curiosity anchored my feet. I squinted into the dimness, straining to see. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice a shaky whisper. No response came, just the echoes of my question bouncing off the walls. As I stepped forward, more tendrils of cold air licked at my skin. The whispers had receded into a soft hum, but they still thrummed in the back of my mind. It was like they were alive, eager to wrap around me. I glanced back to the nurse's station, hesitating. That chart still tugged at me, its unsettling presence overshadowing the creeping fear. I knew I should keep moving, but the urge to investigate clawed at me. What if there was something on that chart that could help? I turned back, quickly scanning the chart again. The shaky penmanship was familiar in a way that made my heart quicken. Then it hit me. I'd seen that name before, somewhere in my life outside these walls. Who was she? A sudden noise broke my concentration, a footstep, light but unmistakable, echoing behind me. I spun around, my heart racing again, and froze. The shadow was closer now, featureless but haunting. I could feel its presence like a heavy weight in the air. "Help me," it whispered, in a voice that mirrored the child's. But this time, the voice had a sharp edge, a plea filled with something darker. "Where?" I shouted. Why was I still engaging with this thing? The figure leaned forward, and I caught a glimpse of something at its feet. A small, ragged doll, the same one the child had clutched in the supply closet. My breath hitched, and I took a step back. Everything inside me screamed to flee, yet my legs felt frozen to the ground. "Take it," the shadow urged, extending its hand towards the doll. My own hands trembled as I glanced from the doll to the shadow, and in that moment of hesitation, the world around me shifted. The lights flickered, casting a brief glow that illuminated the corridor. When the darkness returned, the shadow was gone. I was alone with my restless heartbeat and the unsettling whisper still lingering in the air. "This can't be real," I muttered to myself, trying to suppress the unease stretching my nerves taut. I ran a hand through my hair, taking a shaky breath. I could feel the weight of something pressing against me, the urgency of the child's plea returning. I had to find her. I spotted the stairs at the end of the hall. Without thinking twice, I bolted toward them, knowing I had to get to the next floor. As I climbed, my mind raced. What did it all mean? Who were these voices? When I finally reached the upper level, I stumbled into a hallway lined with patient rooms. The air felt charged with tension, and I barely noticed the quick glimpse of a silhouette at the far end. I hesitated. This was it, a new lead, a chance to uncover the truth. Or would it lead me deeper into the dark? "Who's there?" I called, my heart pounding once more, aware that there was far more at stake than just my own fate. And that's when I heard it again, a child's giggle, clear and sharp, echoing through the closed doors. It sliced through the darkness, shattering my resolve and replacing it with a chilling dread. I strained to listen, the laughter bouncing off the sterile walls. It was impossible to tell where it came from, but it felt as if it wrapped around me, coaxing me deeper into the shadows. I hesitated, the heaviness in my chest tightening again. "Hello?" I called, my voice wavering. "Is someone there?" The only response was the sound of my own heart racing, thudding against my ribcage. I steadied myself and took a step forward. Each door I passed seemed to pulse with a life of its own, whispers slipping through the cracks. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as I sensed eyes on me, even though the hallway appeared empty. As I approached the fourth door on the left, the laughter rang out again, closer this time. It was followed by a whispered, "Come play." My stomach churned. I clenched my fists, trying to summon the courage to push the door open. What if it was the child? With a quick, deep breath, I grasped the cold handle and turned it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. The curtains were drawn, and the only light came from a flickering lamp on the bedside table. I stepped inside, barely suppressing a shiver. "Hello," I repeated, hoping for a reply that would soothe my rising fear. But there was only silence. I scanned the room. It was a typical patient room. Bed, chair, small desk, but nothing stood out to me. Then I noticed something on the floor, partially hidden in shadow. I bent down and found a small, worn book with faded pages. As I flipped it open, a few photographs slipped out and scattered across the floor. They depicted a young girl laughing, her hair pulled into ponytails. And there, in the background of one photo, was the same doll from the hallway. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The child from the whispers? Was this her? I picked up the photos, examining them closely, when I heard a rustling noise behind me. My heart skipped a beat. I turned around just in time to see a figure dart across the hall, disappearing into another room. "Hey!" I shouted, adrenaline flooding my veins. "Wait!" I rushed out of the room, glancing around in panic, the laughter now hauntingly absent. I sprinted to the room the figure had entered, throwing it open. To my astonishment, the room was empty. Bare walls, a vacant bed, not even a sign anyone had ever been there. Confusion twisted in my mind. How could someone vanish like that? My pulse raced, and I felt a mounting sense of urgency. I needed to connect the dots. My eyes landed on the book still clutched in my hand. It had details, a name scrawled on the inside cover. Emily. I had heard that name, a flicker of memory igniting. As I clutched the book tightly, my thoughts spiraled. What had happened to Emily? Why was she here? Then a sudden noise jolted me from my thoughts, a soft thumping, rhythmic, like a small fist tapping on the doorframe behind me. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw it. The doll was back, perched on the edge of the bed in the empty room, looking at me with its one glass eye. A deep dread settled in my bones as I took a step toward it. What was happening? I felt as if the shadows were reaching for me, closing in. I had to find out what links Emily and the child who had whispered to me in the darkness. But as I reached for the doll, the lights began to flicker. I felt the air shift around me, and I knew something was coming. I staggered back as a loud crack echoed through the room, and darkness swallowed the flickering light. The sudden silence was oppressive, leaving only the sound of my shallow breathing. I squeezed my eyes shut for a moment, trying to steady my racing mind. Then I heard it again, the soft thumping, now louder. My heart raced. Panic surged through me, but I pushed it down. I had to move. Whatever was happening, it felt urgent. I turned back to the door, but just as I reached for the handle, the flickering light returned, illuminating the doll once more. But it wasn't alone. The end of the bed was now occupied by a shadowy silhouette, its form shifting in the dim light. I froze, my blood running cold. I couldn't make out any distinct features, but the way it loomed sent a wave of dread crashing over me. "Who's there?" My voice trembled against my will. I wanted to run, to scream, but I stood rooted in place, my instincts screaming for me to confront it. The silhouette seemed to dissolve, then reformed again, and just for an instant, I thought I saw the outline of a girl's face, Emily's face, smiling. Then the smile turned into an expression of fear, and I gasped, taking a step back. But the thumping continued, insistent, and I jerked my head to the doorway. It was coming from the hallway. In desperation, I raced out of the room, the book still clutched in my hands. I needed answers, and maybe whatever was making that noise could provide them. I dashed down the adjacent corridor. Each door I passed seemed to whisper secrets. Marie, another staff member, had mentioned that parts of the hospital were off limits, but I didn't care now. I pushed forward, guided by a force greater than curiosity, the instinct to protect Emily. "Wait!" I shouted again, but the figure continued to elude me. It flickered like a faulty light, moving between doors, disappearing into the shadows. I wasn't just chasing a ghost, I was chasing hope. The hope of finding Emily, to understand what had happened. Then, all at once, the thumping stopped. I skidded to a halt, gasping for breath. Was I too late? I strained to listen, hoping for any sign. Just silence. Hopelessness began to creep in. That's when I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, just beyond the flickering light, lay something on the floor. A small cloth, tattered and worn. As I stepped closer, a sense of recognition washed over me. It was the same fabric as the doll's dress in the photos. "What are you trying to tell me?" I whispered. But before I could reach for it, a loud crash reverberated down the corridor, echoing against the walls. My heart dropped. The sound came from behind me. I turned, adrenaline spiking, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. The playful, childlike laughter echoing down the hallway, mixed with a whisper that sent chills up my spine. "Come back." I couldn't stay, not anymore. Something dark was here, and I was no longer sure if I would find Emily or be swallowed by the shadows. I spun around, ready to run, but just as I took a step, the lights flickered one last time, plunging everything into darkness. I stumbled backward, disoriented in the engulfing darkness. It felt like the walls were closing in. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the laughter that still lingered. I forced myself to breathe, then took cautious steps towards the source of the noise, hoping it would lead me to Emily. Dim light gave out, but I managed to find the wall, using it as a guide. My fingers brushed against peeling paint and cool metal fixtures. I concentrated, trying to shake the feeling of being watched. There was no time to hesitate. As I moved further down the hall, I caught a glimpse of light flickering from a room on my right. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to turn back. But I had to know. I peeked inside. The room was empty, except for a solitary chair facing the window, its back to me. The curtains swayed gently, even though there was no breeze. I felt drawn to it, an unsettling pull that urged me to enter. But just as I took a step forward, a deep thud jolted me from my trance, the floor vibrating underfoot. I spun toward the noise, my breath catching. A door down the corridor had slammed shut, rattling the frames around it. I sprinted toward it, the urgency gripping me tighter. The distant laughter had stopped, replaced by a low murmur that I couldn't quite make out. When I reached the door, I grabbed the handle, hesitating as I noticed how cold it felt. I pushed it open, revealing a small, dimly lit room filled with old medical equipment and dusty boxes lined against the walls. I scanned the space, searching for anything that might explain what was happening. Then I saw it, a mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. I stepped closer, drawn by a strange urge. My reflection stared back at me, but it looked distorted, as though something behind me was warping the glass. I blinked, and the image shifted, displaying something far more unsettling, a fleeting shadow that rushed past me. I whirled around, breathless, but found nothing, just emptiness. The air grew heavy, and the familiar laughter echoed again, closer this time, almost inside my head. "Emily?" I called out, desperation lacing my voice. But no answer came, only that childish giggle that sent shivers crawling up my spine. I turned back to the mirror, needing to escape the room, but feeling trapped. And that's when I noticed it, a small, dirty handprint on the glass. It looked too small to be mine. Bile rose in my throat as realization hit me. This had to be Emily's. She stumbled back, but before I could react, the lights flickered again, flashing violently. I barely had time to register it when everything plunged into darkness once more. Panic twisted in my stomach. I had to get out. I raced out of the room, heart pounding. I needed to find her, to understand what was happening before it consumed me too. But as I burst into the corridor, an icy blast of wind hit me, laced with the scent of something metallic and damp. I froze, sensing someone, or something, looming just ahead. "Who's there?" I shouted into the blackness, my voice echoing off the walls. But the only response was the chilling laughter of a child trailing off into the void. I stood there, the laughter fading into silence, my stomach knotting in fear. The corridor felt endless, shadows twisting in the corners of my vision. With a deep breath, I forced myself to move forward, the chill trailing just behind me like a ghost. As I crept down the hall, I tried to focus my thoughts. Emily had to be close. There was no way she could be gone. The laughter haunted me, and I could feel it echoing in my mind, a taunt that twisted my senses. As I traversed the dimly lit space, I noticed doors on either side. Some were ajar, others completely closed, but all seemed to promise secrets hidden within. Then, to my left, I spotted something glowing, an emergency exit sign flickering in the distance. I quickened my pace. It might lead me to an end, an escape from this nightmare. When I reached the door, my hand hovered over the handle, but a sudden wave of nausea hit me. It felt wrong, the air thick with unease. I pushed the door open, wincing as it groaned on its hinges. The room beyond was larger, filled with hospital beds and machinery that looked long forgotten. It felt like a makeshift graveyard for the living. As I stepped inside, I noticed a bed in the corner, covered in what looked like a lace-shrouded figure. My heart raced. I didn't want to disturb anything, fearing what might lurk beneath. Half of me wanted to run, but the other half was drawn forward. Was it Emily under that sheet? Before I could reach the bed, I heard a soft whisper, almost like a breath caught between words. "Help me," it called, but the voice sounded distorted, echoing all around me. My nerves were on fire as I twisted around. "Emily?" I rasped, searching for any sign of her. There was nothing but that whisper again, beckoning me from the shadows, pulling me deeper into the room. I edged closer to the bed, the weight of dread pressing against me, but all I could see was the shape beneath the lace. Suddenly, without warning, the lights flickered overhead. They buzzed, the atmosphere electric and charged. Then, everything went dark. I stood frozen, surrounded by an oppressive silence. The air turned heavy, and I could almost hear my pulse in my ears. The darkness stretched for too long, before the emergency lights flickered back on, casting eerie shadows. The bed was empty. My breath hitched as I stepped back. "What is happening?" I whispered to myself, dread pooling in my gut. At that moment, a high-pitched laugh erupted from behind me, sharp and taunting. I turned quickly, the sound stabbing into my consciousness. "Emily!" I shouted, but only the empty, dimly lit room answered back. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement near the far wall as a small figure darted into the corner. No, not small figure. A shape that could be confused with a child, but not quite. My heart raced, and instinct screamed at me to run. I bolted toward the exit, adrenaline surging through me. But just as I reached for the handle, the door slammed shut with a force that almost toppled me backwards. I turned, panic rising, and saw the outline of that same figure now standing in the corner. It pointed toward the shadows, and for one terrifying moment, I felt something deep within shift. I couldn't figure out what was worse, the fact that I was no longer alone, or the dread that came with knowing what lurked in the darkness. "Help!" the whisper returned, echoing hollowly through the room. And that's when I noticed the reflection in a nearby glass panel. There was someone behind me, looking at me. I whipped around, my heart slamming against my ribcage. The reflection was gone, but I could still feel that presence behind me, a weight that pressed on my back. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I took a shaky step forward, searching for something, anything, that could explain what was happening. "Show yourself!" I shouted, trying to mask my fear with bravado. But only silence answered, thick and suffocating. I turned back to the bed, my thoughts racing. Was it the same figure I had seen, or something else entirely? My mind swirled with questions, confusion clouding my instincts. Suddenly, the lights above flickered again, and I felt my breath hitch. A chill crawled across my skin, and the shadows began to dance. I was no longer in a place that felt familiar. I was trapped in a nightmare. I had to get out. I ran to the door, pressing my palms against the cold metal handle. It refused to budge. Panic surged, and I slammed my shoulder against the door. The sound echoed, but the door remained stubbornly closed. "Emily!" My voice rose in desperation. "Where are you?" No answer came. The laughter from before buzzed in the silence, and I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream. I scanned the room, looking for another exit, hoping for a window or a hidden door. Then I saw something glinting in the corner, just beyond where the figure had stood. My curiosity piqued despite the fear clawing at my insides. Carefully I approached, avoiding the bed where I felt the weight of the unseen gaze. As I got closer, I realized it was a small silver key lying against the wall. It shimmered in the dim light, almost inviting. My heart raced. Could this be the key to freedom? But why would it be here? I reached down, my fingers trembling as I wrapped them around the cold metal.
Just then, a low groan echoed from the far side of the room, sending a jolt of fear through me. I dropped the key, my instincts screaming at me to run again. But I couldn't. I had to know.
What was causing that noise? I turned slowly, my breath shallow as I focused on the shadows. "Emily? Is that you?" I called out, desperately hoping to hear her voice answer me. The shadows shifted, and I strained to see. Then the figure materialized again, now closer. Its form was more defined, and I could see that it was small, too small. My heart sank. It was a child, or at least it once was. The face was blurred, almost forgotten in the darkness. "Help!" The voice came again, but it was slurred now, distorted. I stumbled back, but my foot caught on something, and I fell hard to the floor. The pain shot through my arm, but the fear was far greater. "Stay away!" I yelled, scrambling to my feet, the key forgotten. The figure took a step closer, and suddenly I felt a surge of anger. "Where is Emily?" I demanded, my voice shaking but firm. "Where is she?" The figure halted, just for a moment, and that's when I saw it again, the flash of a reflection in the glass panel. This time, the outline was clearer. A woman stood behind me, her expression twisted in shadows, eyes filled with something like sorrow. I knew who she was, or at least I thought I did. "No," I whispered, panic and recognition entwined. "You can't be real." Before I could react, darkness swallowed the room again, and I realized the key to escape might not be the only thing left behind. I felt the air shift, the shadows moving, as though they were alive, wrapping around me. Then I heard it one last time, Emily's voice, faint but unmistakable. "Help me." As the darkness thickened, I stood frozen, trapped between the past and an uncertain future. I knew I needed to move, but fear rooted me in place. I had to choose, but what could I abandon? I didn't know the answer, but the shadows were closing in. The shadows pulsed, creeping closer, intertwining around me. My instincts screamed to flee, but my feet refused to budge. Compelled by something deeper, I stepped forward, desperate to reach the reflections of my past. "Emily!" I called out again, louder this time, as if sheer volume could peel back the darkness. "Where are you?" My voice echoed, but only the ghostly laughter returned, mocking me. Then, in a blink, the shadows parted. A narrow beam of light broke through, illuminating a corner of the room. I squinted, unsure whether I should feel relief or dread. The light flickered, revealing a door I hadn't noticed before. It looked old, the wood splintered and worn, but it was an opening, my chance to escape. But as I took a step toward it, the small figure appeared again, blocking my path. It trembled, the blurred face still incapable of revealing itself. "Help!" it whimpered. I hesitated, torn between the echo of my sister's voice and the desire to flee. "Where is Emily?" I shot back, the figures dripping with urgency. The figure's shadows twisted in response, and suddenly I remembered the key I had dropped. If the darkness was pulling me closer, maybe it would be different for the key. If it could unlock the door, perhaps it could also reveal the truth. I turned back to the shimmering key, hastily picking it up from the ground. My fingers trembled around it, adrenaline coursing through me. I had to try. I'd rather face the door than the twisted specter in front of me. With resolve, I approached the door, key in hand. "Let me through," I demanded, trying to push past the figure. It hesitated, a flicker of what might have been indecision passing through its shadowy form. I inserted the key into the lock, heart pounding. It felt cold and foreign, but I turned it anyway. It clicked. Before I could register what was happening, a hiss filled the air as the door began to creak open. "Help me," the distorted voice pleaded one last time, followed by a surge of darkness. I rushed through the door, heart pounding, bracing for whatever lay on the other side. The instant I crossed the threshold, I was hit by a wave of fresh air, different from the stifling heaviness of the room. The transition almost stunned me, but the oppressive feeling still clung to my shoulders. I found myself in a narrow hallway lined with peeling paint and flickering lights. The sound of my own footsteps echoed against the tile floor, and I paused, hoping to catch my breath. But a hollow silence swallowed me whole. Just as I was about to move forward, a sudden chill washed over me, creeping up the back of my neck. Something didn't feel right. My instincts kicked in, and I turned, half expecting the figure to follow. Nothing. I let out a shaky breath, trying to calm my racing heart. But then I heard it again, the soft whisper of "Help me," softly drifting through the cracks of the old walls. It was coming from somewhere deeper in the hallway. My gut twisted as fear bubbled back to the surface. I didn't know where Emily was or what this place was. Was I heading deeper into danger? The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I took a step toward the sound, and with every stride, I felt the walls closing in, as though the building itself urged me to turn back. The last thing I needed was to follow another misleading voice, but there it was again. "Emily!" I shouted, hoping to pull her from whatever dark grip held her. And just like that, the lights above flickered, plunging me into an unsettling twilight. Something was coming. I could feel it. I could hear it. I had to move, but the shadows flickered alive once more, hanging on every word and every breath. I felt their anticipation, and suddenly it dawned on me. There was no escaping this. The nightmare wasn't over. Had only just begun. I pressed onward, adrenaline surging through me, every whisper pushing me deeper into the unknown. "Help me!" The voice had morphed into a plea wrapped in urgency, demanding my attention, clawing at my resolve. I stumbled down the hallway, chased by the echoes of shadows, unsure of what awaited me around the next bend. As I rounded a corner, I came face to face with a door, its surface battered and worn with age. It stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out, fragile against the backdrop of darkness. I hesitated, my heart thudding in my chest. I wanted so badly for this to be the answer, the way to Emily, but my intuition screamed caution. But then I heard it again, the giggle, the soft, taunting laughter of a child. The sound pulled me closer. "Emily?" I whispered, pushing the door open with a shaky hand. The room beyond was small and cluttered, stacked with old toys and medical supplies that had long since accumulated dust. At the center of the room, however, was something that made my breath catch. A small, ragged doll resembling the one from the photos. "Help me!" The voice was louder now, more insistent. A wave of determination surged within me, igniting my desperation. I stepped inside, scanning the room for any sign of hope, of understanding. Near the back, I saw a mirror, barely reflecting anything in the dim light. As I approached, the laughter faded, replaced by silence. I peered into the glass, expecting my own image to stare back, but instead saw a glimpse of a child, a fleeting shape within the reflection, not just mine. "Emily," I called, my voice trembling. As if in response, the air thickened around me. The mirror shimmered, and for a moment the distortion cleared, illuminating the room behind me, only to instantly revert, plunging me back into shadow. I turned swiftly, the air growing colder. In that heartbeat of clarity, I had seen fragments of memories, the laughter, the joy, the innocence lost. "What do you want from me?" I cried into the void.
The door slammed shut unexpectedly, rattling me. A sinking dread filled my chest as the darkness descended with a tangible weight. The air vibrated with whispers, pulling at my sanity. "Help me!" It was the same plea as before, but now it was layered with urgency, as if I were losing my chance to save Emily. In a whirl of panic, I dashed back to the door, but it refused to yield. The shadows swept closer, wrapping around my limbs, urging me to give in to despair. "You're not real!" I shouted, forcing myself to stay grounded in the chaos, yet fighting the urge to give up. Then, strangely, the shadows receded, revealing the battered doll once more, perched as if waiting for me to take action. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just a doll. It represented Emily's lost childhood and the memories still trapped within.
The hospital. Shivering, I approached it. "Where are you?" My heart ached with the thought of failure. I clutched the doll, feeling its fabric beneath my fingers, and imagined all the warmth and happiness it once held. Suddenly, the whispers shifted in volume, morphing into something unintelligible. The sound crescendoed, then broke, like glass shattering in an empty room. My pulse raced. I needed to find Emily, wherever she was. Rattling my breath, I turned back to the door, the doll cradled tightly in my hands. I felt the pull of something faint at my fingertips, a connection to the shadows. With one deep breath, I grasped the handle again and pulled. The door creaked open, revealing what lay beyond. Light flooded into the room, blinding me momentarily. As my eyes adjusted, I saw an unsettling scene. Glimpses of children playing, laughter echoing in harmony with the whispers in the walls. The air felt electric, charged with the essence of lost innocence stretched across layers of time. But where was Emily? I stepped cautiously into the light, absorbing the sounds and sights around me. The laughter echoed, almost taunting me. I could feel her presence somewhere, close yet intangible. Each step deeper into the heart of this place felt like a gamble against an unwritten fate. Just as the warmth permeated through the chilling uncertainty of the room, the laughter morphed. The once joyful tones shifted into high-pitched cries of distress that reverberated through the air. "Help me, please!" A final cry tore through the cacophony, a desperate call that roused my spirits and plunged me deeper into the haunted memory. "Emily!" I shouted, willing her to respond, to guide me. And then a form appeared in the distance. A flickering outline materialized, the faintest hint of a child's silhouette, a fleeting echo of hope. But as I raced toward it, it vanished. I stopped in my tracks, panting, heart racing. My limbs felt heavy, shackled by an unseen force. In that moment of despair, as darkness once again threatened to close in, I resolved to fight back. "I won't give up on you," I yelled into the shadows that lingered. The world tilted, shadows recoiling at my defiance. Yet, even as I gathered my resolve, I could sense the ambiguous nature of this place, dancing between reality and nightmare. Had I truly stepped into something supernatural, or was this the delirium of my own mind? A final time, armed with the doll, I pushed forward, ready to break the unseen chains that bound both Emily and me. What awaited me around the next bend remained a mystery, but it was one I was determined to unveil, regardless of the cost. I stepped forward, into the unknown, into whatever darkness still awaited, holding fast to a single belief: I would find Emily.